Welcome to Page to Screen, the podcast where Nikki and Christina discuss books that were turned into movies and films that were adapted from books. As always, we do remind you that spoilers lay ahead. Now, we invite you to decide with us the age-old question, which is better, the book or the movie?
Hey everybody, welcome back to Page to Screen. I hope you're ready to get into this new episode with me and my number one desert island person I'd like to host a podcast with, Christina.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you, Nikki. The honor is clearly mine. I mean, if I were on a desert island, I would pick you as well. So this is fortuitous.
It's not really a top 5 for me because there's only one. It's you.
Well, the top 5s will just be me in a beanie, me in different hats.
Yeah. That one time we dressed up for Halloween. That would be like number 4.
Yeah, so I mean, let's get into it. Today we are discussing High Fidelity, the 1995 novel by British author Nick Hornby. It is about Rob, a 35-year-old record shop owner, recuperating from a breakup with his girlfriend, Laura.
Yeah.
And for me, I had never read the book, but I had watched the movie. And how many times have you read this now?
I've read the book about 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
This might have been my 4th time reading it. And before you say anything about Rob, yes, he's problematic, but...
Oh, you think?
But there's something... The book overall, there's something about it that keeps me coming back to it. And it might just be Nick Hornby's writing in general. I love Nick Hornby.
I do too.
Yeah. He's really good at crafting characters that feel...
real.
Yeah. Like you want to sit with this person a little bit and you're like, oh man, I know this person.
Yeah, I have not read anything by him before, but he is on our list multiple times because of so many of his books have been turned into movies, and I am not mad about it. I do enjoy his writing, so whenever we reach another Hornby book, I will be excited about it.
Yeah, it's so crazy to think about what books he's written and what movies they made from them, but we'll get to that later.
I mean, I didn't realize that this was set in, because obviously I've seen the movie, which is Chicago. I didn't realize that this was set in the UK, and it makes total sense.
Oh yeah, it's funny when you look at it with the movie. They both really work. I feel like it's less about, the book is less about where it takes place and more about what's happening, because you could literally take this group of individuals and put them anywhere as long as you have a record store.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about, because both of us, we read the book, watched the movie, and then we also, surprisingly, we both watched the TV show, even though we had absolutely not talked about it. So after watching the TV show, I made a comment that this is kind of timeless. You can drop this story and the characters into a lot of different decades and locations, and it's just so kind of universal when it comes to relationships that it just works. Yeah,
it's Rob and Laura's breakup is something I feel like everyone has that one. You know, everyone has that one breakup where it's just like, I don't want to say it wrecks you, but it makes you really rethink a lot of things about your life, which is what Rob ends up doing in the book.
Yeah. And it's like a quarter life crisis that he's having.
Yeah, because he's definitely, I think the other thing is reading it now, especially after Waiting to Exhale with these very strong, powerful women, and then reading it now where I'm in my 30s. I'm older and I can see a little bit more about some of the stuff going on with Rob, being older and all that. I'm just going to keep saying that. Being old. Someone listening to this is going to be like, you think that's old? And I'm going to be like, I'm sorry. Sorry. I feel old today, you guys. But it's just an interesting thing to have like to sit with. Mm-hmm. I'm in love with Rob's Record Store. By the way, championship final. I would be the jerk there every weekend. I know it. I can feel it in my bones.
One of the things I love doing is going to record stores, and we have a really cool one nearby where we live that I love going to, but I haven't gone since COVID. And I see myself going soon, even because I'm pretty paranoid when it comes to COVID stuff. I know probably a little bit more hardcore than maybe I even should be, but I see myself going to that record shop again. This made me just want to go.
This made me want to own a record store. Every time I read it, I'm like, I could do that. Totally. Yeah. Because I am that person.
I think it's funny that basically the last book we read is chick lit. Yeah. And then this one I thought was guy lit. So I looked it up to see if that's an actual phrase. But it's actually called lad lit, like L-A-D, lad lit. And the phrase was coined because of this book.
Are you kidding me?
I am not. It's considered one of the ones that they decided to come up with that name, and then they like retrospectively pulled in some other books that were pre-High Fidelity and consider, those to be lad lit as well.
I love that so much. It's so, honestly, that totally explains everything. Every book that Nick Hornby's ever written is explained with that one term, with the exception of Funny Girl. I think that's the only one where he really writes from a female perspective the whole time, but...
It's interesting because even though Rob is so problematic, I do enjoy him kind of going through what made him who he is today, or at that point of the book, because he is reflecting back on all this stuff, and it's weird because he calls himself an asshole multiple times.
Oh yeah, he knows. But at the same time,
he knows he has issues, and yet he's still kind of unapologetic about it.
Yeah. And I think that's what I like about Rob, is that he, as the narrator of the story, as our protagonist, he is so problematic and so wrong, and you don't really want to root for him because he's just a really crappy dude, like he is a jerk, but you're still rooting for him because he knows he's a jerk, and he goes on this like a spirit quest or whatever through all of his past relationships to really find out, like, why am I a jerk when it comes to these relationships? And you get to know him through all of this and through like his guy time and stuff, and it's just, I don't know, you bond with him, I guess. You know what I mean?
The weird thing, though, is that he's not necessarily trying to figure out why he's a jerk. He's trying to figure out why he keeps getting rejected.
Yeah.
And...
because he's a jerk. Actually, that's not true. Every girl he talks to has...
other issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you ever do
that phrase? Whoa, excuse me? Me going and talking to exes? Absolutely not. I'd rather die. I would rather die.
You're like, I'm good. I'm in a solid relationship. I'm fine.
If I were just like out and about, walking my dog, and I looked down at my phone and one of my exes is calling me, I'd throw the phone into a river. I would throw my phone into a river. I would change my phone number and I would move away.
I can see you going in their house like, Carlos, I need a new phone.
Would you? Would you honestly like consider that?
I don't want to talk to them. No.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to talk to any, like, you reach a point, like, and this is something that Rob goes through too. It's like you reach a point where you really don't have connections to your the old gang, like your old friends from high school and stuff like that. Like, I wouldn't even reach out to those people. Like, there's a lot of people that I was really, really good friends with in high school, but I would never reach out to them and be like, what do you really think about me?
Right.
Like, even people in college, like people I don't talk to at all, old roommates, stuff like that. I don't want to talk to any of them because
but
you reach a certain point. You know?
Even if you did, though, I don't think that people would necessarily give honest answers.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I think everyone would be like, unless you're sitting across from somebody, which during COVID, definitely not happening. Right. I don't think you can really judge.
Yeah.
And then right now in the age of the internet and stuff, I don't want to be that person where someone's like, oh my God, you'll never guess who reached out to talk to me about themselves. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Like, how awful would that be? I mean, if anybody from our past wants to reach out and tell us how awful we are, by all means, try me. See what happens. I'm just kidding. I can't fight you. We already learned that in Fight Club. I don't know how to fight.
Honestly, this book was very triggering for me when it comes to Rob and how he treats women and his girlfriends. Just like he has the breakup with Laura, and he finds out, which is kind of funny, he finds out that Laura is possibly sleeping with their old neighbor Ian, and he immediately is like, I hate this fucking Ian. And he then has a talk with her, which I loved the talk. I thought that their conversation's really good. But after the discussion, he realizes that she hasn't actually slept with Ian yet, and he's happy about it, and then immediately sleeps with somebody. And he's just doing this thing where he's lying to women, he's gaslighting women to a certain extent. He's doing all this stuff, and that's the kind of stuff that when I was dating and I took a break from dating, then I ended up, marrying my husband. It took me like years to get over some of the mind games that guys play.
Yeah.
And reading this book took me right back to that kind of like angry state, and it makes me feel very uncomfortable. And I'm glad that I had a little bit more time after, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to make this a Christina therapy session.
Oh, God. I'm charging you by the hour.
But I was able to finish this book and have a few days between finishing it and today when we're recording. And I'm glad because I sort of had to let a little bit of that anger kind of go. Because it is a really good book. But when you're reading it and you're in his mind, it was just very upsetting.
Yeah. And Rob's relationship with Laura, every time I read it, it's never just like, I think Rob's in the wrong all the time. Rob and Laura are so problematic for each other.
Yeah.
Like, I found, especially with this reading, like, usually I go through it, and a lot of the times I'm reading the book, I'm really thinking like, man, I want to run a record store. But then this time reading it, it was very much, especially, following the last episode, and you get a character like Laura, and I was like, I am upset with her. I found myself really upset with her, especially when there are a couple of parts that really bothered me. And I think the first one is definitely at her dad's funeral. When she goes after Rob because Rob leaves, and she tries to sleep with him, and she just says, I'm too tired to fight. I'm too tired to fight this. And she's basically just like, her dad has died, and to me it's just like, well, I'll just settle then. She had this great message to him at the beginning of the book where she was like unsure of herself and all of this stuff, and then her dad dies, and she's just like, well, Rob's there. And it's like,
I think that's I think it's really complicated. It's like her dad is gone. There's a lot of psychological stuff because it's her dad.
Yeah.
So her dad dies and they were close. So it's this male figure that's gone. And she sees Rob. So almost immediately she replaces her dad with Rob. And it turns out that her dad actually really did like Rob, and Rob didn't even realize how much he liked him. But she sleeps with him. Well, actually, they don't actually sleep together.
They don't sleep together because he asks her.
I know.
This is the moment in the book where I look at Rob and I'm like, I actually appreciate you in this moment, because she wants to sleep with him and she is ready to sleep with him. And he keeps asking her over and over again, like, are you sure? Like, are you okay? Because he's reached a point where he's kind of like, okay, this is never happening. And then her dad dies and then all this stuff happens. And then he asks her what sort of protection she was using when she was sleeping with Ian. And it sets her off and she just starts crying. And it's like, Rob is doing the right thing in that moment.
But see, he's not, though, because he says to her, because I said this in the last episode, I really appreciate it when they use the baby stoppers, the contraceptives, and in books and movies, because they often don't. So I appreciate when they talk about safe sex in media, but he says that and she starts crying because she's like, just a few weeks ago we were together and now you're afraid I'm going to kill you. And then he admits to himself in his thoughts that, yeah, sure, he had a good reason to say that, but in truth he said it just to hurt her.
Yeah.
And that's Rob in a nutshell. He does something and you think he's like an all right guy and you understand where he's coming from, but secretly in his head he wants to hurt her.
Yeah, but I'm left wondering a lot about Laura too, because after all that stuff, before all that stuff, you kind of find out that, so the reason they broke up, really, there's a lot of reasons, but there's the 4 big ones.
This is all so messy.
It's such a mess. Their relationship should not work. I think that's what we need to take away from this book, is that Rob and Laura shouldn't be together. They are together for a while, and the 4 main reasons, it's Rob sleeps with somebody else. Laura, he sleeps with somebody else. He sleeps with someone else while Laura's pregnant. Laura has the abortion because he slept with somebody else, and he admits to her that he's looking at, like, for other people. But then when you read that part about the conversation that they're having when he admits that he's looking for somebody else, and Laura's like, oh yeah, well, it's always, she basically, I agree with him in that moment where he's like, she lawyered him.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, like she lawyered him into saying, yes, I'm looking for somebody else, because she wanted out. And she was looking for her way out.
But he also admits that she is too smart for him. That she outsmarts him every now and then. And that's one of them, where she's able to see things and see through his bullshit and, kind of tricks him into saying it. But just because she tricked him into saying it doesn't mean that it's not true.
No, but also after the whole funeral thing, she moves back in. And she begins to immediately try to change him.
I know. And I mean, I don't even think I need to ask this, but do you think that they will ever stay together?
No.
No.
Because, like, even at the end of the book, Rob has learned and changed a lot through his entire journey, losing Laura and getting her back. And we know that because at the end, he's, like, focused on what makes her happy. And he finally understands that it's not the things you like that make you a person. It's the person that you are that makes you like the things, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But when Laura spends a lot of time trying to make him into somebody that he's definitely not. Like, he is what he is at this point, at face value. And we know that because he went through all of those previous relationships, and it was always there was always like one underlying thing. Like he doesn't have, you know, the confidence and all this other stuff. But at the end, Laura's like, oh, I paid up front so you could do your clubbing thing again and blah, blah, blah. And it's like if I found it to be a beautiful gesture that she does this for him. Mm-hmm. But I keep thinking about it in terms of like me and Jesse. Like if I, out of the blue, was just like, oh, I booked you a recording studio so you can go inside and start playing music. It's like, yeah, he might do it, but also what if, I don't think she's thinking of the after. Like what if he has one negative review from somebody and then it puts him back in that space, because Rob's a character where once he hears something negative about himself, he kind of stews in it, you know?
What's funny about this is that we recently did Eat, Pray, Love, which is something that it's really the only other book that we've done this podcast that triggered me and got me into like a certain place. But the huge drastic difference between these two is that this is, and obviously one is allegedly real and the other one is a character, but he is self-aware. Yeah. He is self-aware. He knows what he's doing. He does make attempts to correct it. And going back to his old girlfriends, even if it's for one reason, which is him being kind of a dumbass, thinking like, why was I rejected? And, you know, it's him. He still wants to try and figure things out. He is looking at the world and trying to figure out his place in it. And then, yes, he does make attempts to correct himself. And I appreciate that, and I think it's really beautiful. And the complicated part with Laura is that it's almost like she's trying to recreate when they were in love, which is when they met and he was the DJ. So it's like, well, when were we happy? It was at that point. So let's go back to then. And it's difficult. It's tricky.
I definitely, looking at the two of them as characters, I definitely feel in my heart of hearts that they maybe had another year.
Yeah.
There's, I can't see it going any farther than that with them, which is, you know, is giving more credit to the relationship than I really should, because they aren't good for each other. It's like, I almost feel like she's resentful too because he has the record store.
She is funny because she says that she doesn't care about that and that he can be who he is, but it's almost like she creates these situations and says it's okay. Meanwhile, yes, she is resentful of certain things.
Like she gives him a loan for the record store, and you know, everything's fine. Then they break up and she keeps bringing it up about him paying her back. And it's like, those are the things that bother me about Laura, is like, she wants to help him if it's going to put him in a position that she deems fit for her life. But when it doesn't work, she's just like upset about it. Like she even makes a crack about him reorganizing his records.
Well, she makes the point because he does this thing where after every breakup, he reorganizes his records. So it might be alphabetical order or in order by author, biographical order to his own life. Yeah. And they break up, and then she comes by, and then she asks if the reorganization has happened, and he says yes, and she's kind of hurt thinking that she is just the same as his other breakups. And I think that that's valid too. It's like, if you're going to be in a relationship with somebody, you shouldn't already be planning on what you're going to do when it's done. Yeah. You know what I mean? And the fact that he's already doing this thing, she sees herself not as something significant in his life, but just a number. And even the way that he has like the top 5, you know, ultimate breakups, and he's so kind of vindictive about her that he doesn't want to list her, as if she even knows that he's making this list. and she doesn't even cut it.
But see, I don't see it as vindictive, especially like the reorganizing of the records and stuff. I see it as more of a, like when everything in your life is going wrong, you want to focus on the one thing that you can cross off your to-do list. Yeah, and I found him, reorganizing the records as his one way of setting something in his life right, so he can at the end of the day be like, well, at least I have that, and then move on to the next day and do something on top of that. That's how it comes across to me. Less like he's adding Laura into like the every girl situation, like after every girl he does this. It's more like after every girl he does this because he doesn't understand the situations with every girl.
Yeah, and one of the things about this book is that it's sort of like it's sort of like the Weezer Pinkerton album, or any Lana Del Rey song, or a lot of Nine Inch Nails songs. You know what I mean? Like, those songs are made for a certain emotion that you feel. Yeah. And if you felt that emotion all the time, you're a miserable asshole. But those emotions are still valid. When you go through a breakup, you're not in the best headspace. You are upset, emotional, you're angry, you're sad, like all these things at once. And reading Rob, like I said, kind of triggers me a little bit. But we all go through it, like we all go through those moments. And that's the kind of beauty of the writing here, is that it's like brutally honest. It's brutally real. Yeah, you really, I think, and that's probably why I've read the book so many times, is that it's just something that it's so familiar a feeling. And like we said, that's what Nick Hornby's so good at, is creating these characters who are so grounded in reality that you're like, I know this type of person. Like, I'm friends with this person. And I think that's what the whole book is, Like, you have those, everyone has those feelings at one point. The questioning, the ruining of your life sort of situation that everyone goes through. And it's, I don't know, it's nice to spend some, like, now that you and I are both out of that whole scenario, thank God. I wouldn't even know how to start. I wouldn't even know how to date somebody now, especially now in COVID. It's, oh no, I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah, no.
Carlos is the end.
Yeah,
I'm not. If knock on wood, hopefully nothing bad happens to him. But this marriage ends in death. I mean, that's it. And
oh yeah, I told Jesse that if I die, he's joining me in the coffin.
Like, if there were ever a post Carlos time, I'm done. I'm Norma Desmonding it. I'm gonna fuck off into a house, and that's the end of that. Can we like switch it up a little bit and do a whatever happened to Baby Jane, and we just live together in a house? I swear I won't feed you a dead bird. I swear. Right. Although I do like the idea of Norma Desmonding it and just being like, Max, play me the podcast. That's perfect. No, but I mean, is it not difficult for you when he's talking about like how he treats girls, and like when he was growing up, and like it's just about like sleeping with girls, getting as far as you can, and women are just taught to say no. It's hard for me to read that kind of stuff. But it's interesting because a lot of that stuff is mentioned a lot of that is with his high school girlfriend. Mm-hmm. And I was never a teenage boy. Spoiler alert. But that's the way it's portrayed in, TV and film. That these sort of scenarios, like, it's offensive, yes, but it's also a glimpse into this world that I wasn't a member of, so I didn't understand it, like I don't understand the thought process in his head during those moments.
But it's interesting to have that glimpse there and then to see how that changes when he gets
Everything.
to, like, Charlie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone he really wants to be with who is definitely like, yeah, no, bye.
I think it's like this super interesting viewpoint into what it is to be a guy, because I don't know about you, but it's like my parents gave me like the sex talk when I was a kid, and they taught me certain things about, dating and all that. Just growing up, they were fairly open with it and talking to me about it. And then when I was older, my mom talked to me about sex stuff and relationships, and he makes it a point to say that him and his dad never talked. And he, as an adult, has all this pressure as a guy to make sure that he's attentive to a woman in bed and all this stuff. And then he wonders if his dad, who grew up obviously in a different decade, ever even had to think about that.
Yeah.
So they've never had a conversation about women or sex. And growing up, being a guy, and even like look at guys nowadays, an earlier generation had stuff like Porky's and that. And then the next generation has American Pie, and you still kind of grow up with guys just want to bang girls, and it's not about their personalities. And it's kind of sad. It's like this creation of toxic masculinity, because Rob's not necessarily a bad guy, but he's got problems. And it's like, I don't think he could have ever not had these problems just with the way that society is.
Yeah, and especially going back through all of that, and not having spoken to his dad, I think he wasn't given the groundworks to deal with dating, let alone being in a long relationship. Because even when his mom calls and she tells him that, oh yeah, Laura's gone, her mom starts calling and is like, what did you do to screw it up this time? And it's like...
Right.
And he's like, shouldn't you feel bad for me? I feel bad the relationship's over. And she's like, oh, poor Laura the whole time. You get an understanding that Rob's parents really didn't expect much of him. Mm-hmm. So when he gets with Laura, you realize they think more highly of her, thus they think more highly of him in conjunction with her. And when it's over, it's like his family doesn't even really care, because when he does go home to surprise his parents by going home, his parents are loaded at that wine tasting party.
Yeah, which I loved.
I was like, that's so something I'm going to end up doing at one point in my life. Don't come home, we're wine tasting.
I mean, honestly, that sounds like your parents in a way.
Well, yeah, my mom never wants me to come home. My mom's like, don't come here. I'm like, okay. Guess I'll stay in Brooklyn.
When he's going through the exes, it is kind of funny because you see different Robs. You see the high school Rob, you see the college Rob, and you just see him slowly being created through these different relationships.
Yeah. And not only just like created, but also like torn down. Like ground down to what we have now. It's like, it feels like there's a steady buildup, and then Charlie is like the apex.
Yeah.
And then from there, that's when he drops out of school. Because he's failing college. He leaves school, starts working at a record store, and then it's almost like he flatlines at that point.
It's like he flatlines, yet having the record store, it's a failing record store, so he's not doing well, so there's that. But if it were a successful record store, that's not a bad life for Rob. I mean, having a record shop and you've got these two employees, even though they won't go away, they clearly have like a relationship all together.
Oh, Dick and Barry. I love them.
Yeah, I do too. But it's like he sees it as failing, but if he had like a better perspective over himself in his life, that's not a bad life.
Yeah. Honestly, when they talk about some of the stuff that they do in the record store, just like, it's kind of like Cheers, you know?
Yeah,
where
yeah, definitely.
he owns the thing he loves. He has control over the thing that he loves, and he loves
Mm-hmm.
music to the point where he talks about how he wants to, sleep with a a rock star. He wants a rock star in his house making music, and he wants to be in the liner notes and all that stuff. It's music is Rob's life, so to have him be in control of that, like I think everyone around him kind of sees it as a sad scenario for him. Like, oh, he could
Mm-hmm.
have gone on to so much more. But I think where he is at is perfect for him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, despite what everyone else says, I think he's happy. And
Yeah.
he is finally in control of something.
I thought it was interesting that when he's talking about sex, he says that it's the only time that he can just lose himself. And he says it's not even about like the person he's with, it's just like the one time that he lets go. And I thought that was so interesting that he says that about sex, but it's not music. He doesn't lose himself in music. You would think that music would be the thing that he can escape into.
I think he's too much of a nerd for music. I think you're
Yeah.
constantly thinking like, oh,
Sure. Yeah.
this album reminds me of this album, which, was based off of the musical stylings of this person. Like, music
Yeah,
you're
that's a good
constantly
point.
building
Yeah.
up on. It's almost like it's like film for us, like
Right.
I
Right.
I can't watch a movie without being like, wait a minute, that guy in the background to the left, I know he plays a bigger part in the other movie.
Yeah.
Let me, and then I'm like 2 hours later, I'm on IMDb and I missed the whole film.
No, for sure. Yeah, that's a good point because I mean, when you and I, we're not just reading and watching movies for fun. It's like homework that we're
Yeah.
constantly doing.
I know. I feel like I'm back in college every time I start writing
Yeah.
down notes. I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, but we did that kind of stuff even before the podcast. Like I feel like
Oh yeah.
when I watch a movie, I feel like I accomplished something.
Same. Especially when I find something new in a film that I've seen like 100 times.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
and it's just that thing that like lives in my brain and I'm like, haha, I'm gonna Google that later, and I like Google it and I'm like, yes, I knew I was right. There's this like deep satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
In that respect, I feel like Rob.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I feel like Dick and Barry. Let's get real. And those are two people we haven't talked about at all yet. We've been so focused on the Rob and Laura relationship that we haven't talked about Rob's relationship with his coworkers, Dick and Barry.
Yeah.
And I can't with Barry. He's one of those guys you hate to love. And
Right.
I know we're not talking about the movie yet, but Jack Black is Barry.
Yeah.
There's no one else. No one else could have played that role.
Yeah, I mean, just with both the movie and the TV show, though, I think that the casting of Dick and Barry, well, the Dick and Barry characters, is pretty perfect because they have to be these characters, but then they also have to have a relationship together and a relationship with the three of them at the record store. So that dynamic has to work individually and as a couple and then as a group. And it does, I think.
Oh yeah, it's perfect. You need the right dynamic between all three, and it's just it's perfect. Like you have Barry is loud, obnoxious, rude, mean sometimes, but funny mean. I guess that would be called sarcastic. I guess funny mean is sarcastic. And then Dick is like super socially awkward. So Barry constantly gets to be ahead of him in the hierarchy just because Barry's louder. And then you have Rob who is their boss. So he's always the head. It's just like a really good dynamic, and the scenes with the three of them. Like you'd think that they wouldn't really get along, but they really do care about each other.
Yeah, they do.
And I think that's what's really fun about the three of them.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting when Rob is talking about girls and Laura and everything, and he says that he doesn't like thinking of his girlfriends as his blokes, that his blokes are his blokes. So he treats women differently. Like a girlfriend is a girlfriend, not your friend, you know? And that to me is so interesting because, you know, you and I are best friends, but we both see our husbands as our best friends too. Like we have
that's actually not 100% true.
Oh no.
No, I read an article a few years ago about female friendship and how what women tend to do is they tend to make their significant others their best friend. So the stuff that you would tell your best friend, like all the stresses of the day and all this other stuff, like the stuff that you and I just like the stupid stuff we talk about, women were putting on their partners, and it was something about putting stress on the relationship because there's no delineation between friendship and relationship. So when the relationships ended, you felt like you had nobody and you were all alone.
Yeah.
And Jesse and I have talked about this, and I told him, like, Christina is my best friend, but he is my husband. And both of them carry such a heavy weight, but there is a difference between the two of them.
But see, this is where we're getting into our therapy session because
now I owe you.
For you and I, we will tell each other if we're having a bad day, a bad week, or whatever. But I find that you and I also have a certain amount of like escapism where if you're having a bad day, I'm sure that Jesse may be more privy to it throughout. And then you and I get together and we're sending each other, you know, funny things, and we're talking, we're trying to make each other laugh. So it's like we're the pick me up to it, but we're still giving that stress over to our partners.
Yeah. And see, that's really, see, you summed it up a lot better than I did. That's really it. Like, I want to be able to turn to my best friend when I'm having a bad day and know that my best friend is going to want to pick me up, because you're not always here. Like, well, duh, especially now it's COVID. You live in another state. But Jesse is here, and he's dealing with, you know, stress from me all the time.
Yeah,
you know, like, that sounded awful. Like I'm putting so much stress on him every day. But like, especially, you know, the month of January was really hard for us. We had a lot of stuff happen all at once, and he hears a lot more about some more like really, no offense, Christina, he hears a lot of the like super serious stuff, and we work on it from like the ground up. Whereas I turn to you and you're like, you want to see something funny? And I'm like, oh my God, yes, please. Jesus Christ, yes, please. But I think that's also our coping
that's our coping mechanisms too. Yeah. I think you and I both are the type of people where if we're in a situation and someone isn't doing well, we're like, what do I do? Oh yeah, make them laugh.
Yeah, we're like, hey, you want to see something funny? I feel like we're Mike Wazowski on Monsters Inc. Like, oh, hold on, let me burp up a microphone for you.
But the sad part about Rob is that he sees his girlfriends as just girlfriends and then his blokes as blokes, yet he's not talking to either one about what he's going through and thinking. He keeps everything kind of bottled up. So, of course, he's going to have resentment about people, because he does with his coworkers. He does with his employees. Yeah. He resents them for, you know, their lack of work ethic, but he's not actively talking to them about it.
No, they have to figure all that stuff out on their own. And it's upsetting.
And that's part of his problem, though, is that he's not working on his relationships, and then he's not, instead of correcting something, he just goes from relationship to relationship.
Yeah. And that's also something where I think at the end of the book, his relationships with Barry and with Dick are stronger at the end of the book than they are at the beginning of the book, because, you know, he helps, you know, Dick gets a girlfriend, you know, and he's super supportive of that. And he stands up for Dick when Barry's making all those moths jokes about her last name. So you can...
I liked that.
Yeah, so you can really see Rob starting to really really be a better friend towards both of them. And then Barry, formerly known as Barrytown, that's my favorite. Just a quick detour. That's my favorite when they're like, did they ask you to be in their band because their band name was Barrytown? And Barry's like, well, it started out that way. I'm always like, oh, poor Barry. But at the end, like, Rob really rags on Barry and Barry's dreams of wanting to be, you know, in a band because Barry doesn't play any instruments. But then he hears him sing at the end and he's like, oh my God, you're actually really good. And he's very supportive of him in the end.
He's very supportive.
Hey, that was good. Look at you and all the puns. I love it. It's a very funny day.
I hope the best for Rob. Like some sections are hard, but I do appreciate him, and he is one of those characters that I don't think anybody should idolize Rob.
No.
Rob is not somebody to be idolized, but Rob is somebody who reflects best and worst about relationships and thinking about yourself and trying to correct yourself where you can.
Yeah. I think that's what we should all take away from Rob, is having the knowledge to see where we're wrong, whether or not we choose to fix it.
I did cry pretty hard at the end because as we discussed, Laura's dad dies and he goes to the funeral. He's never been to a funeral before. He made me laugh too, where he's driving over with like a mutual friend that they have, and he says, oh, you know, are we going to something like, oh, are we going to the graveyard or whatever? And she goes, no, we're going to the crematorium. And he's like, Jesus.
Yeah.
Because he's like, fuck, this is dark. And they get there, and when the casket is being lowered, Laura just starts sobbing, and that kind of got me.
Yeah.
And then he realizes that something that he never realized about himself, which is that he has a fear of death. Mm-hmm. And he says he has a fear of death, but the way I took it is that it's not death specifically, but more of just like a fear of loss. So he never even let himself fully appreciate Laura when they were together because he was afraid that he was going to lose her. So instead of just giving his all in a relationship, he's always just gone to the next relationship because it's easier thinking that you're not going to end up with one of you dying one day, which is like, fuck, it's so for real and dark.
Yeah. And I think that it explains so much about every relationship that Rob's been in. It explains so much about why he wants to stay at a record store that's not, you know, not really bringing in the money. Like, how he never wants to change anything. Mm-hmm. Like, he talked about painting those logos on the wall in his apartment, and how he won't do that either. And I think that also goes back to him rearranging those records because, you know, death and loss, they're things that they happen. Like, you can't stop it. Like, once you reach a certain point, you realize that everything is just going towards one thing. It's like death and taxes are the only things that I know are constant in this world. And Rob is definitely, he latches onto something he can control. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why he is the way he is with Dick and Barry at the beginning of the book, because he knows that he can control those situations. That's why he rearranges his record collection, because he knows he has control over that. Mm-hmm. That's why he doesn't feel too much shame about sleeping with Marie DeSalle. But that's also why he has such a problem when he sleeps with her and he can't sleep at her apartment.
Yeah, I loved that part when he gets up and then it turns out, because she comes out and sits next to him, and she hasn't been able to sleep either. So they have this moment where they kind of let down some of the bullshit that they were exchanging before they slept together. And I don't know, I thought it was a really pretty moment. And this moment isn't in either the movie or the TV show, really.
Yeah.
Where it's like these two people who are both at a crossroads at the same time. And, you know, they don't end up together. And I don't think that there's ever a world that they do end up together. But that kind of human connection where you just recognize somebody else who's at a crossroads.
Yeah. And I think that's why the TV show works so well with a female as Rob, because Marie DeSalle is Rob, but a female rock star version of Rob.
Right. Yeah, I like when she's talking about, in the book, it's what, Patsy Cline ×2,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so she says that she's written this song, and it's this great song, and it's actually about this ex-boyfriend she has who's also a rock star, and he wrote a song about her. So she's like, we're just going to keep writing these songs about each other, and it's, you know, very incestuous, but it's reminiscent of what Rob is going through and thinking about how you just keep making the mistakes over and over again. You just keep in these cycles.
Yeah. Oh, question for you about that. In the book, they don't mention the rock star's name in particular, who she was in the relationship with. And he writes in a line where he's like, think of a big American rock star, insert his name there. But for the meantime, we'll just call him, they call him like Robert or something. Mm-hmm. Did you imagine somebody else's name in that position? And if not, who do you think it would be?
Dang, you know, I didn't at all think about anybody specifically. Why? Do you have somebody in mind?
John
I feel
Mayer.
like you do. John Mayer in 1995?
No, I'm thinking about now. Like, when I read that line, I was like, that's such a John Mayer thing to do, to write songs about other people.
I'm like,
And
baby girl, John Mayer was not around in 1995.
And he would definitely have a Patsy Cline album.
Yeah. Oh, John Mayer.
I love you, John Mayer.
I always love, you have this love for John Mayer, and you also have this love for this genre of music that I can only describe as sad boys on a mountain with a guitar.
Listen, don't hate the player, hate the game. Listen, I am Rob.
You're not.
No, I'm not. But, you know, earlier you were talking about, like, there's those albums that have those feelings that you sit in. The albums I listen to are those albums that have those feelings that you sit in. But I listen to them because they're easy to read to.
You know, that's one of the reasons why I really like electronic music, because the, you know, beeps and boops, I can just throw that on either while I'm working or reading, and it's just like this chill vibe, you know, music that I can.
I love that you call electronic music. I'm sorry. I can't even say it with a straight face. You're like, I could just like ignore it. Those beeps and boops.
No, I mean, one that I reach to all the time is the Nine Inch Nails Ghosts album, which is just like,
of course you do,
all these scraps of songs that he never ended up like using, and it's just so chill. Like, don't make fun of me.
I'm not making fun of you. I love like chill coffee shop vibes.
Yeah,
like I'm going for like early '90s Seattle Starbucks before it became like a corporate thing. That's the kind of music I listen to, for anyone wondering. Like pre-Lilith Fair, like Lisa Loeb.
Sure.
I'm so old.
You know, I do love the music between the book, the movie, and the TV show. I found a playlist that collected like all of it. Oh my gosh, it's so good.
There's not a bad song in the bunch. Every time they mentioned a song, I was like, oh, yes. Every time they did a top 5 list in the book, I was in it. I was in it to win it. I loved it.
I did laugh at the mention of Walking on Sunshine in the book.
Oh yeah. His Monday morning tape.
And he's like, the last thing I want to listen to is Walking on fucking Sunshine.
Can we talk about tapes for a minute? Because
I miss tapes.
I just do you remember making mixtapes?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh my god. And you would and if you had to listen to it on the radio and you had to wait all day for your song to come on, and then it comes on and you have to hit record, but if you miss the beginning, then it's kind of just like, oh, I have to start all over and wait another 8 days to hear this song.
Do you want to hear the dorkiest thing in the world?
Absolutely.
I remember when I was a kid, and it was when Charlie's Angels came out, and in Charlie's Angels, they feature Smack My Bitch Up, and I really liked that song, and I wanted to get the album. My parents wouldn't let me because it had the sensory on it, the censored on the CD. So I remember having a tape ready to go in my tape player, and at night the radio would play the bad music that they couldn't play during the day, and Smack My Bitch Up came on, and I pressed record so fast, and then I had to hide that tape from my parents because if they knew I had taped it, I would have been in trouble. Such a dork.
I love that because I clearly recall having in my house growing up Snoop Dogg's first album on cassette tape. So I don't know anything about this parental advisory stuff. But yeah, oh my god, that's the sort of stuff that brings back memories. Like everyone, you know what else? Burning CDs.
Yeah.
People, I'm sure there are people who don't know how to burn a CD now. Like making 100% making a mixtape. When Rob talks about it, the curating
the rules.
The rules for making a mixtape, I 100% agreed. I was like, I should print this out and hang it in the apartment. Because you know me, I love making Spotify playlists because it reminds me of making mixtapes and mix CDs, and all of mine have stupid titles.
Same. But
I love them. I love them so much.
My rule with a playlist on Spotify is that it has to flow if you listen to it from beginning to end. Yeah. But it also has to work if you put it on, the mix. Yeah. If you just shuffle it, it has to work, and it also has to work from beginning to end. So I like to tell stories with my playlists. Oh yeah,
I like having it. I make Jessie 8,000 playlists. All my playlists I usually make for Jessie. But yeah, I agree. It has to have a progression from beginning to end, but it also has to be something you can listen to on shuffle. That is so important. Because if you put it on shuffle and the first song that comes on you want to skip, then you didn't do it right.
You know, it's funny because I really love playlists and I love a good mixture of music. And yet, I also, one of the reasons why I love records is that sometimes, especially with growing up in the mixtape era and now the playlist era, it's easy to forget the beauty of a perfect album, an album by a musician or group or whatever that is just, it works. And, I've talked a lot about Nine Inch Nails. They're my favorite. And the thing about Nine Inch Nails is that every single album is a conceptual album. So there's a whole point to it. And listening to the songs in order tells a story. And when I go to a record shop and I get a new record, I just love looking at it. And it's in my hands, I'm holding this musician's work of art. Yeah. So when you listen to a record, it's just a different experience than just digging a great song or a good collection. It's one masterpiece.
Do you have a favorite here's a good question. Do you have a favorite record in your record collection? And two, do you have a holy grail album that you just want that you can't seem to find?
I mean, I don't know if I would say a holy grail one, but the one that I've wanted and I've looked at a few different times is the Trouble Man soundtrack. And I found one that was very expensive and I could not afford it. And it was an original one. And then aside from that, I've only found reproductions, like, modern reissues of it. And I don't want a reissue. I want an original, but not that nice. Yeah. Like, I'm okay if the edges are a little bent. I don't need like that kind of perfection. And then favorite in our album collection. One that I really like, it was my birthday present to myself 2 years ago, was Blondie's Parallel Lines. Ooh. It's a really cool one because I want to say it's like German press. So that one's pretty cool. And I always forget how kind of perfect that album is because there's so many good songs. And she's such a badass that's when that you throw it on. It doesn't matter what mood I'm in. It's a good album to listen to.
Yeah, that for me is the Blues Brothers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's one of those. It's one of those albums that I can put on and just listen to from beginning to end, and I'm like in it to win it. I love the Blues Brothers album. I really do. But I do have like a lot of really weird, because of working about that record store, like I have a very crazy collection. It's so crazy that I have duplicates of albums that I gave to Jesse when we first started dating. And now they're back. And I'm like, oh no, I need to get rid of these. Like I have some crazy ones. I have I have a lot of George Carlin. I have almost every Billy Joel album.
See, that's one thing I'm working on, is that I want to get every Nine Inch Nails album, every REM album, there's a few different bands that I would love to have every album in their discography. And a lot of them are a little bit more modern, so it's not as expensive as like going after some of the old ones.
Yeah, I have I think I have almost every Simon and Garfunkel too.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
But the album that I want more than anything, and I like you, I want an original. I really only have one reproduction album in my whole collection, and it's a Tom Petty album that I got for Jesse. But I want an original Dolly Parton Jolene.
Oh.
That's what I want. Like
that would be your shining.
I would frame it. That's what I want. Yeah. That's like the album for me, because I have, and it's funny because I would think it would be Barbra Streisand or something, but because of you and that weird Canadian one you gave me, I have almost all these. I have a huge this is so bad. I have a huge collection of Barbra Streisand, huge collection of Cher, Billy Joel. I have Simon and Garfunkel. Rob and Dick and Barry would not want to hang out with me. They'd take one look at this record collection and they'd be like, "Oh no." Like, "Oh, sorry." Like, please be my friend. We have Creedence. Hang out. We have Creedence Clearwater. Come hang out with us. But yeah, that's my goal. So if anyone out there has an original Dolly Parton Jolene album, feel free to send it to me. Give me my address.
Well, in this discussion, do you think that we're ready to move on to the movie?
Let's do it. Right off the bat, I love John Cusack.
Everybody loves John Cusack.
John Cusack is, I have loved him since I first saw Say Anything. I love Lloyd Dobler. I wanted to date Lloyd Dobler. I wanted to live in a world full of Lloyd Doblers, sensitive Lloyd Doblers, and I feel like Rob is just Lloyd a little bit older.
Well, I mean, that character is kind of problematic too when you think about it.
Very problematic. Nothing says romance like stalking your girlfriend and standing in front of her house with a boombox.
You want to hear something so cute it'll make you throw up?
Oh my God, yes. Hold on, let me go get my bucket.
When Carlos and I were dating long distance, he filmed himself holding his iPad over his head playing that song.
No, that's sweet. That's really sweet.
It's super sweet, but, you know, John Cusack and all of his romantic comedies, it's like, there's something to the toxic masculinity, and then you get someone like John Cusack, who, even if his characters are maybe a little problematic or complicated, it's good to have this kind of soft, sensitive, introspective male lead for men to look at.
Yeah, when watching the movie, like, usually when we watch these movies, I think, like, would I want to change anybody out? Yeah. And I wouldn't change a single person cast in this movie.
The only person I would change out is the actress who plays Laura.
Oh, I can't.
How do you say her name?
Iben.
Good luck.
Oh, God. I'm going to say something really offensive in a minute because her last name sounds like IKEA furniture.
It does. It's, you want to, our American tongues want to say hejejel. I am certain that's not how you say it. It's got to be like, heyet. I think the
J's are Y's.
Yeah, heyale?
Yale? I've been Yale? Like, is the H silent?
She is the only one who I would switch out. I think that Laura is... There's a little bit of a coldness to Laura, certainly, in the book, but there's something about this actress that I can't really connect to her, and it's sort of... And not in a purposeful kind of way. Like, I simply think that their scenes are a little stunted.
Yeah, it does come across, I guess, as clinical.
Yeah.
Like a little too clean
And there's also those unfortunate bangs.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you brought those up. I kept looking at the year the film was released and I was like, because the only other bangs that were that bad in all of cinematic history.
It's a Scream.
Yes.
Courtney Cox.
Oh my goodness. R.I.P. Courtney Cox's hair and Scream. Oh my goodness.
Well, it's what? Is it Scream 3?
It is Scream 3 when they're in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And it looks like someone took like a teasing comb and glued it to her forehead.
And we should say, so the movie is, it was made 5 years later, and it's in 2000. It feels like a 90s movie, but the one, like, big thing that tells you that it's 2000 and not in the 90s is Jack Black. His presence it's clearly 2000. It is directed by, what's his name? Stephen Frears? Yeah. Stephen Frears. And he's, like, a weird director. He has a lot of different stuff under his, like, IMDb. He's got Dangerous Liaisons, The Queen. Like, he's kind of all over the place in a way. But, yeah, and it stars John Cusack, who everybody loves with his beautiful puppy dog eyes. Jack Black, Lisa Bonet is the Marie DeSalle character.
So perfect.
And then, and it's got a really fun collection of women for his exes, too.
Oh, yeah. Everybody in this movie, Jesse kept looking at me and being like, they're in it too, and I was like, yeah, like everyone's in it. We have, first of all, Catherine Zeta-Jones,
and she's so pretty. It's like young Catherine Zeta-Jones, and she's super cute.
Yeah, and then going back to Say Anything, Lily Taylor.
Yes, I love Lily Taylor.
She lives in my neighborhood.
What?
I've seen her at the grocery store. I saw her at the grocery store and I went, oh my God, it's Lloyd Dobler's best friend and she's in my grocery store. I can tell you, I nerd out so much in my own neighborhood that I don't have to go anywhere else.
One thing that's weird, because with Lisa Bonet playing Marie DeSalle, you know, obviously her daughter Zoe Kravitz is the lead in the TV show.
Yeah.
And they are both so gorgeous. Like, I just want to stare at their faces forever. But they look so similar. Like, parts of the TV show, it's just kind of eerie.
Yeah.
Because you see her parents, and specifically Lisa Bonet.
Well, that's like what I was saying about the book. When you look at Marie DeSalle in the book, Marie DeSalle is the American Rob. And I think that when they did the TV show, you literally have Marie DeSalle as the American Rob.
Yeah.
And it just works so well.
There are certain things with the movie that they give Rob a little bit more of a pass.
Yeah.
Just casting John Cusack, he is so likable that kind of asshole vibe is softened. And then there's no real discussion about like his dad. That's kind of gone.
Yeah.
Even like the whole death thing, he doesn't have that same sort of realization in the movie about his fear of death that he does in the book.
Yeah, he's given... It's kind of like how the guys in Waiting to Exhale were kind of...
Yeah, softened.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that goes to the fact that he is a problematic character. Like, you know, we're rooting for him because he knows he's problematic and he is taking the steps to fix it. But if you're going to sit with this for over an hour, you don't want to sit through all of the other crap he has to do. And I also think it helps because John Cusack helped write the screenplay.
He did, yeah.
So I think that's where a lot of that might have happened. Plus, it's a Touchstone film, which is owned by Disney, so...
Sure, yep. Yeah, that's a good point to make, that it is Touchstone. So the softer parts, yeah, that's a good point to make. And it is switched from, it's no longer in the UK, now it is in Chicago. And it still works. I mean, that change is obviously like a cultural change, but yeah. Everything you can just pick it up and drop it off into different cities and it still makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I do find it interesting the inclusion of the two teenage boys who steal the records.
Yeah.
Because they're not in the book. And then Rob's like, I'll produce
I'll
produce your record because it sounds real cool on this cassette tape. And I was like, huh. But that's something that they carry over into the TV show. Was that specific scene, which I found interesting. Yeah, like we said, Jack Black is Barry, and he is...
So good.
Oh, God, he is so perfect. When he is dancing around at the beginning of the film...
I love the part in the book when he finds out that Laura hasn't slept with Ian yet. Mm-hmm. He goes into the shop, and I think it's Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
And he goes to the Jack Black character and says, if I said I haven't watched Reservoir Dogs yet, what would you say? And he's like, I would say you're a fucking liar. I know you've seen it.
You saw it twice.
And in the movie, it's switched to Evil Dead 2.
Yeah, which is still a good choice. And it takes
him... Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. And it takes the Jack Black character like a second until he realizes the yet part of the sentence, and then he goes with it. And I don't know, it just makes me laugh. And the other guy too, what's his name? It's the other shop guy, and he's like perfect
Dick?
Casting as well. Yeah, Todd
Luizzo? Yeah.
Yeah. He's like just so sweet and a perfect counterpart for Jack Black.
Yeah. You want to just give him a hug.
You do.
Like there's some moments where he's standing there and he's like, I call it like T-Rexing, you know, like his arms are really like folded in on himself. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, do you want to hug? Do you want to hug it out for a minute? Barry's mean. Let's hug.
Yeah. If you walked into that shop, which one would you go to if you were asking a question?
Rob. I would not trust Dick or Barry because I know Barry would make fun of me. Listen, we just discussed what's in my record collection right now. Barry would make fun of me and then be like very snooty and kick me out. Dick would be like, oh, well, yeah, but did you know that it was originally written by, like, he would mansplain the album without meaning to mansplain. Rob would just be like, we
Yeah.
don't have it, and kick me out, and I'd be like, okay, bye.
See, I can see myself walking in, and I mentioned that I've been looking for the Trouble Man record, and me asking Jack Black for it, and then he just responds with, "Who are you trying to impress?"
It's like when you go to Comic-Con.
Yeah,
And you're like looking through, oh really? If you're a real fan,
yeah.
then name 6 other comics where so and so makes an appearance, and you're like, I just like the art. Like, oh, art. That's Barry.
Yep. One thing that just it kills me is, and they have it in the movie, and for some reason I thought it was a little bit softer, but it's actually pretty accurate to the book when he's going through his different girlfriends, and it's the one who he didn't get to sleep with, but then the next guy, she does have sex with him, and then the guy brags about it. So Rob wonders why she chose him, or she said yes to him and not to Rob.
Yeah.
And then she says that basically his treatment of her laid down the foundation of her pseudo being like date raped, and that the experience was so bad that she didn't even have sex again until like the end of college. And then Rob is just happy to find out that he wasn't rejected.
Yeah.
And it's so cringeworthy. And I thought for some reason that the movie made him a little bit more likable in that moment, but he's not.
No.
It's the same reaction. And I'm just like, oh my God, like, I hope guys watching that part recognize it as like a learning point, like be better than this and not just happy about it.
Well, even the part with Sarah too, when she's talking about how crappy everything's gone for her since she left him, and he says both in the book and the movie, he was like, I could have slept with her. That would have been easy. And he says there's something poetic about like sleeping with somebody who left you, and he would have easily done it, but didn't. And it's like, that's still like a dick move. It's dick of you to say that. Like, to even have that thought cross your mind is dickish, but... And they don't play that down either in the movie. It's like they own up to him being wrong.
And I struggle with it because my immediate reaction is to not like him, be judgmental. Yet, like I said, there's an honesty to the writing, and that carries over with the movie, that we can all be assholes. We can all have these bad thoughts, and just because he is being more honest with us, the audience, about it, does that make us better?
Yeah.
Not necessarily. I mean, everybody thinks thoughts that you would never tell somebody or, write online.
Yeah. Well, that's something in the book too, where he says, after he lists out the 4 things.
Yes, I love that part. I actually have it. It's one of the Post-it notes I put in the book. I have the exact line. He says, "And before you judge, although you have probably already done so, go away and write down the worst 4 things that you have done to your partner, even if, especially if, your partner doesn't know about them."
Yeah, and I love that because that's like in the book, and I think that carries over into the movie and into the TV show. It's like, we are watching someone do the worst things he can. But
right.
That's not the sum of him, like, that's not all of Rob. We entered his life at a really low point. And we don't
at a very low point.
Like, we don't know where he's going from here. And if someone were to enter my life at my lowest point, yeah, they'd probably think the same things about me. I mean, I've never done half the things Rob's done. But I mean, like, anybody at their low point is going to be viewed in such a negative way. And then when you read that and you have to really think about it, like, yeah, like, overall in my life, there's probably stuff that I've done unconsciously that's just been so terrible that if someone were to read these things, they'd probably be like, oh yeah, no.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I had my moments where it was like it was like flavor of the week, and I had this like hatred towards men, and obviously I'm not at that moment in my life anymore. But if you made a book or a movie about my life at that point, I don't think anybody would. I wouldn't like me, but that doesn't mean that that wasn't a truth for a while, and it doesn't mean that you are that person forever. So it's it's in a way like weirdly comforting reading Rob and reading his thoughts, because even if they're not the best intentions and the best ideas, it doesn't mean that it's not real.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like everyone's got a little bit of Rob in them at one point in your life, and feel free to fight me. Once again, as we know, I don't know how to fight. But I do think that everyone has that little bit of Rob in them where either you question your past relationships, or you self-sabotage and know you're self-sabotaging, or you're like me and you constantly need to redo your record collection.
I laughed at that because every couple of years I completely destroy my book collection. Yeah. And I mean, like right now I have it where I've got a section that is like, autobiographies and everything. And then the other section is just fiction. And it's annoying me. So I see myself doing yet again. It's like my year and a half. Every year and a half I'll go and redo my books.
Yeah, I have a whole shelf that's just books I have that I haven't read.
I used to have that. It was bottom right.
Oh, see, mine is next to the living room couch as like a guilt thing, where it's like,
oh wow, good job.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, I'm starting to put on a TV show, and I'll turn my head towards the kitchen and I can see them out of the corner of my eye, and I'm like, oh, okay, let's do this. There's like 30 of them on there, and I'm gonna get through them, I promise. But yeah, my record collection is by genre right now, in case anyone's wondering.
Mine's just alphabetical, but I ended up giving away a lot of records years ago, so I'm kind of like in the process of rebuilding.
No, I have way too many. If you need some, but I have those big IKEA Billy bookcases, like the wide ones.
Sure, yeah.
And I have both of those full. Then I have the smaller Billy bookcases. Those are full, like just the bottom, because they're so heavy.
Listen, I don't need to hear you brag about your record collection.
Listen, it's huge.
I'm jealous.
But I also have like 45s and stuff too, so whatever.
Which is super cool.
Yeah, I have a whole Disney section, in case anyone's wondering. I have a record that has the Main Street Electrical Parade on it, so... I know, jealous. Yeah, this is... a while back on Instagram, Christina and I were talking about if we've ever been cool. Guess who's cool now? The one with the Main Street Electrical Parade album.
The movie it's weird. Like, what genre would you even call it? Because it's typically listed as a romantic comedy, and I don't think it's a romantic comedy.
No, I wouldn't call it a rom-com.
No.
A dramedy.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
That would be the best way to put it, because it's not... There isn't a lot of romance in it.
No.
It's weird, because for the time period when it came out, it's very reminiscent of Empire Records.
I have never seen Empire Records.
Oh my God, what do you mean? Okay, stop. When this is over, when we're done recording, watch Empire Records and then tell me you don't get the same sort of feelings from watching High Fidelity when you watch Empire Records. Because they're both based in record stores. You know, it surrounds... Empire Records really surrounds one day. This
really?
Is now, yeah, it's Rex Manning Day. But you have some of the same like Barrys and Dicks and stuff and Robs in Empire Records that you have in High Fidelity. And the difference being that, you know, Empire Records came out in 1995. Mm-hmm. It's just, it gives off the same sort of vibe And I think that you would like it. It's got Renee Zellweger, so. And it's funny because Ethan Embry's in Empire Records, and when I watch High Fidelity, Todd Luizzo reminds me of Ethan Embry.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Like
I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah, so I think that's where I'm getting a lot of like Empire Records meets High Fidelity.
Sure.
So you should watch it.
I do like that Marie DeSalle in the movie, it's not Patsy Cline times 2, it's Eartha Kitt times 2. Thought that was kind of cool.
Oh yeah. In the movie, I love everything about Marie DeSalle. I like that she is just there and then gone, you know?
That bums me out. I wish that and it's funny because they did make it a TV show, but if it's not 2000 and it's 2020, having like John Cusack and all these people in like maybe an 8-episode TV show, and you get more of the Marie DeSalle character in him, I would have loved that.
But in the book too, she's kind of like she's there and gone, you know? Like she's there to this is where the movie I think gets it wrong, because in the book, like we said, there's that great conversation between the two of them, and they realize what it really, like, what they're actually going through, and that you can't, like, they're both going through the same thing at the exact same time. Whereas with both the movie and the TV show, you focus on Rob, the character, just being like, I slept with a rock star, and there's none of that after stuff, which is why I like that she kind of goes away in the film, because without her going away in the film, you're kind of left going like, well, they had a good relationship.
Yeah.
Because you don't have that bit where you find out like, oh no, they both don't have good relationships. They're just like at a crossroads.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think that's the thing that I don't like in the TV show, is that he sticks around for way too long in the TV show.
With the TV show, I really liked it. I didn't have much of an interest in watching it, and I'm glad that I did because I thought it was great. And the unfortunate thing is that it's listed as canceled right now.
Oh yeah, they're not going to do a second season. I'm kind of heartbroken about that. I
know, and I wonder if it's a COVID thing and maybe they will bring it back maybe in a year or so, like once things calm down. But I also have worries that perhaps Zoe Kravitz is just too big, you know, like she probably wants to go on and do movies. But I thought that the TV show was really great. And the only thing I'll say, and this is very opposite of what Christina would normally say, but the TV show does a wonderful job in having more representation, because the movie is just mostly just a bunch of white people, bunch of guys. The TV show does stuff that I think is really cool, but I will say that this is a very masculine book, and like I said, it does kind of go into the male perspective of things. And while we have way too many movies and TV shows about the male perspective of things, this is different. It's different when it comes to guys and the way that they view women in relationships. And I could see something like this with a 2020 lens being good for guys to watch. You know what I mean? Like,
No, yeah, I totally agree.
I hate saying that.
But I liked what they did with the TV show because everyone can be a Rob. And I like knowing that we have a female Rob at the center, and you know that problematic situations don't just apply to men, they apply to women too.
Sure, absolutely.
But what I really loved about the TV show, and this was an episode where I paused it because I was like, didn't I already see this halfway through the other episode? I'm pretty sure I'm halfway through the last episode, and I wasn't. Is the episode all about Dick, the Dick character.
I loved that one. I was hoping that you would get an episode for each of them.
Yes, exactly. I was like, oh my God, we need another episode. Like, I need an episode for each person now because, and that's why I was hoping there'd be a season 2, because I was like, okay, now we have to have a season 2 so we can follow like the thoughts of everybody else, because it was just so eye-opening. And now I really wish that the book or the film would have done something like that with these characters.
Agree.
Because especially when it comes to the Barry character in the book and the movie, because in the TV show we don't really get into her. Really, not until the end when she gets spoiler alert, she gets the guitar. Oh, spoiling everything
so
again.
Good.
It was so sweet and so perfect. And then she's singing.
I just got chills just thinking about it. It was so perfect.
Yeah, and I wasn't planning on watching the TV show either. I was definitely kind of against it, honestly, because I love the book.
Same.
And I love the movie. And I was like, I don't need Kravitz screwing things up. And then I watched the first, I got 10 seconds into the first episode. Jesse came out from the bedroom working, and he was like, all right, so how is it? And I was like, I'll probably turn it off soon. I had watched every episode that one day.
How good, by the way, Zoe Kravitz. I mean, she was great.
She's perfect. And once again, stunning. Everything she wore, I was like, I live in Brooklyn. Why don't I wear clothes like this? What is wrong with me?
I thought it was super cool that she wears some of the same shirts that he does in the movie.
Yeah, everything is so spot on. It is. I think that they add some stuff.
Some of the stuff is like, they definitely added some stuff, but I mean, some of it is nearly shot for shot the same quotes. Like, it's the part that always makes me laugh. When John Cusack is standing outside of Charlie's window, and he's like, "Charlie, you bitch." She does the same thing. Oh, yeah. She does the same thing. And it was cool because, and this is where I said earlier in the episode, this story transcends time, gender, location. It's just so human.
Yeah, because in the TV show, it all takes place in New York City, which is honestly an even better location than Chicago was in the film.
Agree.
Like, it is... You get more life to the situation, and as someone who lives in New York, I can tell you there are a lot of record stores, surprisingly.
I'm not surprised.
Like, I can see High Fidelity being something that sticks with just about every... Like, I feel like there's going to be another iteration of it somewhere at some point. Not like the Broadway musical. We're not talking about the Broadway musical. No offense. It was... No, we're not doing it.
We saw it together.
We're not doing it. We're not talking about it. But we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to talk about it. I'm telling myself that now.
Are you okay?
I think I'm broken. But as long as there are record stores, you can keep making this over and over and over again, and people will still see it because it's the feeling, it's the heart of the piece that really transcends everything.
With the TV show, what's his name? The guy that she dates. I don't even know if they're dating, but the nice guy.
Oh yeah, I like him.
I loved him, and there's a part in the show where, and it's a part that I enjoyed in the book, and it is something that I believe they filmed for the movie but cut out, where it was going to be Beverly D'Angelo. Rob ends up getting contacted for a woman who's divorcing her husband, and she wants to sell all of his records for basically nothing. And the records that he has are like mint condition, rare records. It's this like masterpiece collection, and Rob cannot bring himself to actually purchase the records because he feels for the guy, and he also has, I mean, don't get me started, a little bit more respect for the records than women, but he has so much respect for the records that he doesn't even think it's right to pay such a low price for such a great collection. And it's something they filmed for the movie and they cut out, which I think is a shame because I think it's a really great scene.
Yeah.
And in the TV show, they do it and it's so good. And it's What's-Her-Face, who cracks me up. I love her. Oh my God, I'm having a... What's her name?
Now you made me brain fart. I was just about to say it. Because she's in...
I want to say Polly Platt, and that's definitely not her name. Oh, Parker Posey.
That's it, Parker Posey. It's Parker Posey.
Yes. Parker Posey plays this crazy...
Oh, the
artist woman. Yes, it's so funny.
Bangs.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, she has an art installation to all of these great, like, problems in her life, and one of them is the time she got bangs. So she chopped off the bangs and, like, hangs it in this, like, floating frame thing. It's so funny.
That cracked me up so much that I had to pause the episode.
Same, because both of us got bangs in 2020, and I don't know about you, but I regret my bangs. So
I don't. I
felt
keep
that.
Mine.
No, I want mine to grow out as fast as possible.
I am ride or die.
No, so Parker Posey wants to sell this record collection to Rob, and anyways, Rob gets like completely just shook by this Man Who Sold the World David Bowie record, and this guy, the nice guy.
Oh, Clyde. That's his name.
Clyde, thank you. I don't want to call him the nice guy anymore. I hate the nice guy trope. So, Clyde, it ends up that she doesn't buy the record collection, but then in the car, he stole that record for her and gives it to her, and she freaks out. And just his face looking at her, freaking out about how much she loves the record, it was so cute and so sweet, and I loved them.
I feel a lot like Clyde when I give gifts to people.
I do too. I said that to Carlos. I'm like, is this us when we get each other like weird gifts?
Yeah, I am definitely a Clyde. I love that. I love that addition to the TV show because I guess the big difference between the film and the book and the TV show is that Rob, because she's still called Rob.
Which I thought was cool.
I love that. I thought about it afterwards. I was like, oh my God, if I have a child, I want there to be a masculine, feminine name. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it just feels really powerful. But
I always liked, I mean, we're not going to have kids, but I always like the name Dorian. I'm like, Dorian it could be a guy or a girl name.
Oh, that's a good one.
Thank you.
Congrats on your name.
Thanks.
Your baby name.
I'll get a dog and name it Dorian.
Do it. Or a fish. You could get a fish.
Okay.
You should get a bird because birds like to look at themselves. You get it?
What the fuck are you talking? Oh.
Yeah. You get what I'm doing a book reference.
I thought you were calling me vain.
No, I'm doing for those who don't know, I was doing a Dorian Gray sort of. That didn't go.
That's actually really smart. That's really smart. That's funny. I thought you were like doing some subtle shade my way, like, oh, they like to look at themselves like you do, Christina.
Yeah, boom, mic drop. No, but the main relationship in the TV show versus the book and the movie is Rob had been fully engaged and broke off the engagement, and her ex-fiance ends up getting engaged to somebody else. And that's why we have Clyde as the new sort of relationship for her. And I really like that because, like I said, Rob and Laura should not be together. They, like, two opposites of a magnet, you know? Like, they're just, like, repelling each other. Like, it doesn't matter if you flip one around for a day and they stick. At some point, they're both going to be backwards and they're not going to work. That was a really stupid analogy. But with by adding in Clyde on the TV show, you get a chance for Rob to redeem herself more than Rob gets in the book of the movie.
I was so hoping for season 2 because I was expecting in the TV show when she gets with Clyde, it's sort of like this weird one night stand that they have.
Yeah.
And she's a hot mess and she ends up sleeping with him. She wakes up and he is gone. And even though they had talked about getting waffles the next morning, then he comes back later on saying that he forgot his phone and he brings her waffles. So she feels bad because she's accusing him of walking out on her and says something like, "Oh, it's always the nice guys that do this kind of stuff." I don't believe him. I thought that there was something up with that, and I still do. I'm like, I just don't believe it, especially in this day and age. You don't leave your phone for an entire day anywhere. And I thought that was going to come back. I thought that was going to be that thing where you're like, yeah, he did do something else. And then she finally finds out about it and they have to handle it. But clearly, I mean, there's no season 2, so I don't think it will be addressed. Or do you think that he was being honest?
I think he's being honest because...
Really? I'm so cynical.
Well, I think he's being honest because Rob's never been honest. And Rob has to come face to face with someone who's so open...
Right.
That's why she doesn't know what to do with him. That's why she's like, I hate using this term, friend zoning him. Because she can't understand how to be open with anybody, and she admits that when she talks to her ex-fiance and admits finally that she saw the engagement ring before they got engaged, and she went out and slept with somebody else.
And it ended up being the same night they get engaged because she sleeps with somebody else, comes back, and then she basically asks him to get married, and that's the night they get engaged. It's so fucked up.
It's so bad. But she had been living in that relationship with that and not being able to tell the truth about it, which is what really ended their relationship to begin with. Like, he just thought that she was losing interest in him after the engagement. But the whole time she was just holding on to this secret, and to have somebody come into her life who's just so open and so honest and just so literally giving. I think that would have been so interesting to see in season 2, how she really begins to deal with the fact that she let her ex-fiance go. She's trying to rebuild this relationship with, her coworkers, and she is trying to learn to be honest with herself and with Clyde.
I'm just like having a moment right now. I have hated High Fidelity for a long time, to be honest, because it just makes me feel these things when I watch the movie and while I was reading the book too. And I feel like I'm just pulling a 180 because I think it's great. Yeah. I think it's got that kind of Love Actually level looking at stuff, but it's even kind of better where things are messy. Stuff isn't clear, like relationships and being a person handling relationships. It's just not easy all the time. And to have something that's so honest about it is remarkable.
Yeah. You're getting it. See, this is why I think I keep going back to the book, is that, like, reading it and everything, is that I can read every book that we want to read for the rest of the year for the podcast, but it's really hard to find a book where, and we talked about it in Waiting to Exhale, like, it gets soap opera-y after a while because it kind of feels so artificial, whereas High Fidelity just feels so real. Yeah, it's just so
grounded.
Yeah. See? Thank you. Oh my God, Christina, this is a perfect relationship. We're finishing each other's sentences.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be. This is why you're my best friend and Jesse is my husband. Although Jesse does finish my sentences too. But I don't know. I think that it's something that you really need. You really need something that's going to bring you back to yourself. And I will admit, the first time I read the book, I don't think I liked it as much as I do now. And I think it's because I didn't like knowing that there's a little bit of Rob in everyone. And I think that shut up. I think that the book and the movie really need the TV show to
agree.
make it come full circle for a lot of people, because, you know, Ladlit, I love it. I'm putting it on a t-shirt. Ladlit. You know, it's really heavy and masculine, and, you know, Rob and Dick and Barry are very, you know, bro-y without being like nerdy bro-y. And then you really need to see it from the flip side to really understand that we're all these people.
It's universal.
Yeah. I will say,
right.
What I'm really glad that they got in the TV show, and it's my favorite line from the book, is when Rob is talking to Laura in the book, and Laura comes back to the apartment to grab her stuff, and she's talking to him, and she's like, well, I don't know if we'll get back together. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, I don't know. There's a chance. And he's talking about, like, well, if you're a doctor in the hospital comes out to you and it's like, there's a chance you could survive. Like, what chance are we? And she's like, 9% chance. And it's something that, like, gives him hope. And I think it's so funny. And then to see it played out as the finale of the TV show, I was like, oh, yeah. And then when I was like, oh, there's not going to be a season 2, I was like, oh, where's my 9% chance at this TV show?
I think that there is a 9% chance that the TV show comes back. I don't think that it's completely dead in the water.
Yeah.
I have hope.
What I really hope is that Disney, because it was originally supposed to air on Disney Plus, it was supposed to be an offering through Disney Plus, and they, when Disney Plus first premiered, you know, it was very family-centric. Now they're starting to get into some of the more adult aspects to what they have, and I'm hoping that they'll bring that over instead of keeping it, you know, on Hulu, or at least move it to one of their, like, if they don't want to keep it as a streaming platform, if it's not making the money that they need for, you know, the filming aspects of it. I mean, they have Freeform. They own that. Put it out there.
This is one of those things. Well, actually, let me restart that. High Fidelity is a good example of good art, where I've been thinking about it constantly. Like, I keep thinking about it and toying with it. I discussed it with Carlos. We're discussing it here. And I mean, that's the sign of a good piece of art, is that it just makes you think and talk about it for days.
I agree. And it's upsetting that that they're taking it away from TV so soon. Well, because I feel like the more we do this podcast, the more I realize, even I don't realize that a lot of, like, the films that I love and films that I grew up with were based off of books. And the more you dig through it, the more you're like, there is so much out there that people just don't have the access to. And, you know, especially during COVID times, more people are at home streaming things than they are, you know, doing anything else. And Hulu's a great opportunity to get this sort of medium out there. And I think it's a missed opportunity. And honestly, if we hadn't done this book and this movie, I wouldn't have watched the TV show.
I'm finding with this podcast that Hollywood repeatedly puts a Hollywood filter over things, and books are messy. Books are, I believe, more honest, whereas Hollywood wants to put a little bow on the stories that we get via Hollywood. Yeah. But TV, I think, is in this, you know, resurgence of a golden age that's been going on for, like 10 years now?
Yeah.
And in TV, you can kind of explore characters better and more fully. Even, I mean, High Fidelity, it's like, 30-minute episodes, but over 10 hours, that's 5 hours?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 10 episodes, that's like 5 hours, not 10 hours, my apologies.
Like, what? 5 hours? I was like, I was on that couch all day.
But you're able to explore things better in TV than in movies. So while the adaptation of the book in the John Cusack movie, I think, is a very good adaptation and a very good movie, had you been able to get at least another season, I think that you could have done a little bit better with the subject matter.
I agree. I 100% agree. Well, here's something that we should have mentioned when we recorded Waiting to Exhale. So this year on the podcast, Christina and I decided that we are going to rank the books and movies that we do for the podcast. And just so everybody knows, like it's a shocker, last place goes to Eat, Pray, Love. Right above that is The Birds, and our number one spot is Waiting to Exhale. So Christina, where on the list would you put High Fidelity?
Oh, shit.
I know.
You know, a couple days ago, I would have said second from the bottom.
Dang.
I know. Man, I'll be honest. I can be a flip-flopper sometimes. Sometimes I have like an immediate emotional reaction to something, and I have to just let myself cool down and think about it. Honestly, I might even say number one at this point. Either number one or second.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's a tie for me between Waiting to Exhale and High Fidelity at this moment.
Easily. Yeah.
So let's call it a tie. So our list, once again, is number one, Waiting to Exhale / High Fidelity. And I think that's so interesting because it's relationships from two different perspectives. Chicklit and ladlit. I love it. Number two, well, yeah, I guess our third place. Is that how they do it in sports when two people are tied? It's okay. Then third place would be The Birds.
You're asking the wrong person.
I'm looking at Jesse. He's nodding his head. He watches sports. Go team. Number three would be The Birds. And last forever and always is Eat, Pray, Love. Honestly, I don't think we'll ever watch or read anything that will knock that up on the list. So,
well, and which do you prefer here? The book, the movie, or the TV show with High Fidelity?
Oh my goodness. Oh God, this is such a hard question for me. In honor,
they're a good trio.
In honor of High Fidelity, I will do a top three.
Oh, nice.
Yep. I will do a top three, and number one would have to be the book. Just because it's something that I always go back to. I love it. Number two, the TV show. And number three would be the movie. What about you?
I think that's correct. I think that is a correct list.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna piggyback on you.
Oh, and one more thing about the movie that I wanted to bring up. Something that I found really funny, and that they carried over into the TV show in such a beautiful, beautiful way from male to male to female to female. I loved it. In the book, Rob has this whole thing where he says, like, I'd like my life to be a Bruce Springsteen song just once, which is a beautiful quote. I'm 100% certain the first time I read this book, I wrote that on Twitter. If anyone finds that,
oh my God,
ignore it.
Of course you did.
Oh yeah, of course I did. I'd like my life to be a Bruce Springsteen
so emo.
song,
oh my
just
God.
Once. Yeah, hi. Sad guy on a mountain with a guitar over here. Thank you. But in the film, they wanted to incorporate Bruce Springsteen, and John Cusack is a personal friend of Bruce Springsteen. That's how they got Bruce Springsteen to appear in the movie. I know, right? Must be nice to be friends with Bruce. But he appears in the movie and gives him advice. And then in the TV show, it's Blondie.
Yeah.
I was like,
which is so cool.
It is. It was just perfect. I was like, I can't. I just want to hug the TV show. I really, really like it. You know what? I am tempted to even move it to my number one.
See, but don't. Right now, what you're doing is you're still in love with the TV show. It's very fresh. It's fresh for us. So don't.
The book is always there.
Yeah.
The book is always there. The book is number one. 1, the book. 2, TV. 3, movie. Calling it like I see it. Ugh. I love it. I loved this therapy session with you, Christina.
It was therapy, wasn't it?
It just felt good to unload. Like it feels good to be in a realistic setting in a book. Not that, Waiting to Exhale wasn't realistic. And I mean, The Birds definitely wasn't realistic. But it just feels good to have the honesty.
It's also good to, they say it's like good to cry. It's good to cry. It's good to laugh, to be angry even. And then like think about all of your emotions and feelings. And I've done that over the last 2 weeks. So here's to that.
Well, get ready because the next book is definitely not grounded in reality.
Yeah, so the next one that we are doing is Ready Player One.
This is where I want to, insert Mario sounds, Like, I want the music from, Rainbow Road or something.
So, have you watched the movie or read the book?
I haven't read the book, but I did see the movie.
I'm the opposite. I read the book and I have not watched the movie.
Ooh, drama. I remember enjoying the movie, but not being a super fan of it. So I'm excited to read the book and then rewatch the film and see how I feel about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wasn't going to reread it because I read it when it came out, so that's 5 years ago. So I thought to myself, I got it in my old noggin. And then I was reading a synopsis and I forgot a couple things. I was like, shit, I gotta go back and read this book. So this will be my second time reading it, and then I'll watch the movie.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm really pumped.
Same.
Whoop whoop. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today for group therapy. Just remember, there's a little bit of Rob in all of us.
Well, and thank you to our producer, Jesse.
Yes, who's going to have so much fun editing this one. And thanks to you, Christina, for being here today.
Oh, well, thank you, Nikki. This is always a delight.
Yeah. I look forward to this.
I do too. It's almost like we like each other. Oh, gross.
Ew. Nasty. But thanks again, everybody, and we will see you next time with Ready Player One.
Bye.
Bye.